Criminal Minds, a show with 15 seasons, 324 episodes, and 3 sequels. It's one of the first shows to not only pursue criminals, but really get into the minds of them. Today we'll be looking at where it all began. The first episode of Criminal Minds opens with a woman in the market looking for a car. When she takes a test drive, she ends up abducted and almost a victim of murder. The first characters we are introduced to are Agent Aaron Hotchner and his wife Haley. We find them trying to find names for a child that is soon to be arriving. Through the playfulness of looking for names, the name Gideon is said as a joke, and we can see Hotchner strongly against the name.
Gideon.
Not a chance.
This moment is cut short when the first case of the show is brought to his attention by Fax Machine. The next main character that is called upon is Agent Derek Morgan. We can see him in his natural habitat of trying to pick up girls at a bar. This scene introduces the BAU in a way that watchers may not have known, saying that they do not only deal with serial killers, and it really opens up the possibilities of the show.
Think all we do is serial killers? Trust me, we cover the whole spectrum of psychos.
One of the ladies mentions Gideon again, but this time saying much more about an incident in which Gideon was a part of.
You work with Gideon? Were you with him in Boston?
I was supposed to be.
We finally meet the man that has already been spoken about multiple times by other BAU members. He's currently teaching a class about behaviorism and how they profile killers. Now, the killer that he's specifically profiling here is very important for the end of the episode, so pay attention. He's interrupted during this case presentation by a boy bringing in a folder. That boy is Dr. Spencer Reed. We don't know much about him other than the fact that he's close with Gideon and a student away of his. We will learn a little bit more about him later. When Spencer and Gideon return to his office, they are interrupted by Hotchner and Morgan, saying that Gideon is wanted in the case. Although Hotchner's assertive in the matter, Gideon is a little doubtful about whatever happened in that incident that we're not known about, and if the Bureau really wants him back in action so soon. Now that we've been introduced to the main 4 people of the team, let's stop here and get some first reactions to the relationships, the people, and how I feel about certain characters. It also shows the first showings of Gideon and Reed's relationship. It shows that Reed is a learner, he's mentored by Gideon, and that he really values that relationship. We'll find out a little later why it's important for him in his episode of the series. The first episode also introduces the difference between Hotch at work and Hotchner at home. We see a lot of warmth and loving man with Haley, but almost cold and emotionless worker when he's... Now, moving on, we get the first quote of the hundreds within the show, which reads,
Joseph Conrad said, "The belief in a supernatural source of evil is not necessary. Men alone are quite capable of every wickedness."
Now, you might be thinking this quote is pretty meaningless and just kind of out there, and you're right. You are absolutely correct in thinking that. There's mostly no reason for these quotes other than the aesthetics of them. They find a quote that mildly relates to the situation, and they run with it. Morgan and Reed will have a long-standing relationship throughout the series, and this is the first time we see them interact in conversation. We can see that Morgan is cautious of letting Gideon back on the team, while Reed is on his teacher's side and saying,
How much disorder are we talking about? Morgan, it's been 6 months. Everything's okay.
They have now arrived in Seattle, where they'll be working on their first case. Hotch introduces the team as they enter. Each person is introduced as a special agent, but when Hotch says it for Reed, Gideon quickly corrects him and says doctor. We learn later in the episode why he says this for Reed, and Hotch says this. We later learn in the episode why he says this. When Reed asks Hotch why, he says,
he wants to make sure that they respect you.
This shows that Gideon has respect for Reed despite his age, and also believes that he deserves the respect of others. Right after Gideon insists he is called a doctor, we find out the reason he is a doctor and how much of a genius he really is.
Sandy, no. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's what we call the Reed effect. Happens with children, too. I'm Agent Hotchner. This is Special Agent Dr. Reed.
Oh, you look too young to have gone to medical school.
There are PhDs, 3 of them.
Are you a genius or something?
I don't believe that intelligence can be accurately quantified, but I do have an IQ of 187 and eidetic memory and can read 20,000 words per minute. Yes, I'm a genius.
When finding the unsub, we are introduced to Elle Greenaway, who is not part of the BAU, but is looking to fill the spot in. She is an expert in sexual offense crimes. The unsub is lured out of his house, which is due to Elle. We find out that she does this because she does not send in SWAT teams in where children reside. This is really a key part of her character as she cares for children and really makes sure that there's no trauma left on children that do not need to be there, including SWAT teams and all that stuff that go along with unsubs, families, and victims' families.
I want that opening at BAU. Got any advice?
Just trust your instincts.
Throughout this episode, we found out the reason that Gideon has been out of the field. He was involved in an accident that had killed 6 other agents. They also figured out that the unsub is obsessed with Gideon.
I'm a fan of yours.
Now, let's take a slight pause here for an issue that I think a lot of people should be made aware of. In the interaction with the unsub, it is revealed that Gideon does not believe dissociative identity disorder is a real thing.
You said he was lying. That there'd never been an actual case of multiple personalities.
Now, I want to shout out some YouTube channels and resources to prove that DID is a real disorder and real people deal with it. We now get to see the first time the show comes to the conclusion of 2 unsubs. They have this, we got this right, but everything's wrong. What happened? What did we get wrong? They always have the dramatic build-up until they finally say it, and then commercial break right after to have people come right back in after the commercial.
2 different people. There's a second killer.
This is a Criminal Minds classic and is seen in the first episode and throughout the series. We also meet Penelope Garcia, who will be an important part of the show. We see the dynamic between her and Morgan.
Well, gorgeous, you've been rerouted to the office of Too Frickin' Bad.
Throughout the entire episode, we see that without Reed, they wouldn't have solved most of the case. He figures out the computer password, finds out the location, that it's on a boat, solely based on 12 frames of camera. He is and will always be a key player in every BAU case. As the case is winding down, Gideon and Elle come face to face with the second unsub. During this face-off, Gideon is shot, but still sees the potential in having Elle as a teammate, and I believe he will really showcase her and advocate for her to become part of this team. Gideon walks into the gas station where he comes face to face with a man that resembles the case from the beginning of the episode. He sees the Polaroids, he sees the stutter, he sees the American-made truck. He is convinced this person is the killer, so he's trying to get out of there. But unfortunately, the unsub does see that he has a gun, follows him outside, where he is then confronted with a shotgun to his head. This is where Season 1, Episode 1 leaves off, the first ever episode of Criminal Minds, and the cliffhanger is wanting people to come back and want more from the story of Gideon and what the BAU will do. This first episode really introduced us to so many characters. We see so many dimensions that it would be so hard to encapsulate each character's journey with a season-by-season video. So, I'm going to start a series where we deep dive into each character one video at a time, from beginning to end of their specific journeys. If they are a long-running character who has been in multiple seasons, they will get their own video. But some of them have to be combined. I will combine characters which are in the same seasons as each other. This will take a long time, so please be patient as I do not want to misrepresent any of the characters. The first episode will be on Special Agent Aaron Hotchner.